Hey, what's going on, Savages? Thanks for tuning in again to Savage Studios. Today, we have a very special guest. If you've seen my previous video on the GREENWALL, a book written, we actually have the author here who wrote the book, and it's going to be a good, juicy one. So go ahead, man, introduce yourself. Let them know what's going on with this book, and we can start from scratch and go all the way through.
Yes, guys, my name is DJ VODICKA. I was a former correctional officer with the California Department of Corrections in California. I entered the Department of Corrections in 1988. I stayed out till about the year 2006 after I divulged the GREENWALL prison gang in the Department of Corrections in California. And just to show you right here, this is the book that I authored. And I wrote about the corruption behind the walls by the prison guards in California who called themselves the GREENWALL. I entered the Department of Corrections, like I said, in March of 1988. And my first duty assignment was Corcoran State Prison in 1988 to 1992. When I was there at Corcoran State Prison, I witnessed a lot. I worked the general population side, the level 3 side, and then I went into the SHU side when they activated the SHU in 1989. I was a kitchen officer over there in the SHU area for about 3 years, but I did get a chance to walk the SHU and met a lot of incarcerated inmates and convicts, you know, like Charles Manson, Joe Morgan, a lot of the other different types of crew of the gang members. But shortly after that, after that, I transferred to Calipatria State Prison in 1992 to 1994, which is located down below Palm Springs area, the lower desert. And then shortly after that, after I got tired of the heat in the desert, I transferred to Pelican Bay State Prison in 1994 to 1996, which I assumed the duties of the investigations unit, and I was an evidence officer. So I conducted all the heavy crime scenes, and I've seen
Like
a lot.
ISU?
I was with ISU, which was later known as the Goon Squad or Security Investigation. When I was at Calipatria State Prison, I was part of their investigation squad from 1994 to 96, which I was the evidence officer at that prison.
Okay.
And then soon after that, I went to Pelican Bay, and I went right back into ISU as the evidence officer. And then in 1996, I transferred to Salinas Valley State Prison, which is in the Soledad, Monterey area in 1996. And when I got there, shortly after I got there, I was put back on the investigations unit as the evidence officer and other duties from 1996 to 2001. And then shortly after that, in 2001, I was placed on the main line, and, which I did. And shortly after that, the GREENWALL was formed. This prison guard gang started forming what they call themselves, the GREENWALL.
Okay. Okay, so right there, let's pick up right where you dropped that. Why exactly did the GREENWALL form? Where did it get its name from? Who was allowed into it? Was there any type of initiation into it? Let's just get straight to the root of all this.
The GREENWALL gang was actually formed on, we had a Thanksgiving riot on one of the yards, a Delta yard. I was working that day on Thanksgiving in the Ad Seg unit, doing some overtime down there. And the upper yard at Salinas Valley State Prison, the Southern Hispanic inmates were disrespected by the correctional officers who called themselves the GREENWALL up on the upper yard. So they attacked the Southern Hispanic inmates, attacked the staff on the yard. And when Thanksgiving was there, the administration's not there. It's a skeleton crew. Everybody's off on their little vacations, all that. So they attacked the staff members on the yard. Several staff members were beaten up. Nobody was stabbed, but there were weapons found on the yard. Shortly after that, they formed themselves the GREENWALL.
Okay. So they weren't formed before that, though. They were formed after that.
They were formed right at the beginning of it, and the meaty part of the Thanksgiving riot. That's when all the officers came, came very close from other yards. We had other officers from like C, B, and A yards that responded to the D yard. And shortly after that, the GREENWALL started forming as a tight unit prison gang.
Okay. Okay, so I've heard stories where like there was certain badges or pins that were actually worn, like I want to say turkeys or something like that.
There were, yeah, Steve, there were turkey pins. After the Thanksgiving riot, there was turkey pins worn by several officers on the uniform, which is not allowed or not authorized. And some of the other, they had gang signs they were throwing up, like Greenwall gang signs. They called themselves the 723.
Yeah.
The seventh letter of the alphabet is G. The 23rd is W. So they call themselves 723 or GW. And they threw up like a sign like this. It looks like a W. They throw up on the signs of their chest to let them know who's a part of the gang.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, they wore turkey pins. They were a real tight unit. And it's like the prison gangs that are in the system. It's blood in, blood out. So in the prison guard gang, it wasn't blood in, blood out. But if you became a part of them, and then all of a sudden you didn't like what they were doing, and you became a part of them, and you decided, hey, this is not me, they would get upset or up pre-enforcement and really watch over you and make a tight score. And if you dropped out, they would do numbers to your automobiles. If your car would be out in the parking lot, they write, snitch on your hood or snitch on your door, throw a rat up on your hood, flatten your tires, stuff like that. If they would make it known.
And so let me ask you, as far as like any type of initiation or who they were seeking to let in or join, what were the qualifications to be a part or to even be considered to be a part of that organization?
If you attend their meetings, they had meetings like, it was strange. They had meetings like, let's say the seventh day fell, let's say a Friday, it was the seventh day of the month. So they would have that day, they pick a location off the prison grounds in somebody's home or residential, or either a Soledad or Salinas, and they would have a party. And they would go there and have a party, and people would have like green streamers or green cake, green cupcakes, green stuff. Everything was green.
I see.
To notify that, because we were, as correctional officers, we wore the green uniforms, the full jumpsuits.
Yeah.
Picked them out as Greenwall. So they would initiate themselves there, and they would, vote them in and see if this guy was solid or he wants to be a part of this. And they had their own code. And the whole thing about it, Steve, is the warden at that prison was behind the whole ordeal. He's the one who set this whole thing up.
I see. Wow, that's corruption at the highest level. But what were some, let's say, tactics and actions and acts that someone a part of the Greenwall would have to be okay with doing himself or having his coworkers doing, and being a part of this? What would be some of the things?
If there was a serious incident on the yard, like anything that had to do with attack staff, disrespect staff, these guys on the Greenwall members were part of the internal affairs unit investigation. These were the heart of it.
Wow. Those are the guys that like you would run to for help, and they're in on it, right? Because internal affairs is, I believe, inmates who are going through some kind of officer abuse or being abused by authority. They would go and contact internal affairs to plead their case to these people. And
right, they were the investigations unit, the ISU. And these guys, I'm 6'5", 295, 300 pounds. Well, these guys on ISU are my size or bigger.
Okay.
And they heard word on the yard that a certain staff member was assaulted by, it doesn't matter what race group you are, black, white, Mexican, Asian, whatever. And they found out that you were assaulted by one of those groups. They would have planned their meeting or plan their attack, and they'd actually go down and actually pull that inmate out, even if he's an ad seg or wherever he's at. And once these guys step in, whoever the supervisor of that unit, sergeant or lieutenant, they didn't want to mess with these guys. These guys, they had the keys basically from the warden to go down and hey, we're going to let you guys know that we're not messing around. So they would pull you out of the cell, and they would actually bring you somewhere behind a closed door, a mock closet, whatever.
Yep.
And it's fine. It's called fine tuning. And the Greenwall members wouldn't come out with a mark on them, and usually the opposite would come out with a mark on them. And if they really didn't like you, they would go to your housing unit or cell if you were causing problems on the yard with staff, whatever. These guys would go up and do a cell search and plant a weapon in your cell. Now you're looking at third strike, possibly more time. And these guys, who's going to win on that situation? The inmate or the convict's not going to win. The Department of Corrections is going to win on that.
Yeah. And so before we get any further, you were a part of this Greenwall, right?
I wasn't part of the Greenwall. I never was part of the Greenwall.
Oh, okay. I see. So you weren't associated. You just were able to see that. Thank you for clarifying that, because I want all the viewers to be able to know that you weren't a part of that. Although you have this knowledge of it and firsthand encounter with it all, you were not a part of it. And okay, that's actually a big thing to know, because a lot of the viewers are going to want to know, hey, was this guy a part of this? Did he join this? Or what your story was? Okay, so cool.
I never was a part of it. What happened was on the Thanksgiving riot, getting back to way back on the Thanksgiving riot on D Yard, there was a certain lieutenant. His name's in the book, right? And his name's Greg Lewis. He was a lieutenant of the yard that day. And he knew I was prior squad because I was at Pelican Bay with him when I was at Pelican Bay on ISU. And he was a mainline lieutenant up there. So he knows my ethics, my morals, my beliefs, and all that we're both strong on it.
Yeah.
So when that riot happened on the upper yard and D yard with Hispanic inmates, Southern Hispanic inmates and staff, when I got up there, the yard was completely laid down. Hispanics were laid down on the yards, and they were cleaning up the yard. Well, Lieutenant Lewis instructed me, hey, VODICKA, hey, DJ, do me a favor. Go get the evidence camera out of control, and I want you to photograph. Do what you know best. I don't have to tell you what you know. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I said, no problem, Lieutenant Greg. I'll take care of it. And I instructed these officers who were part of the Greenwall gang. A lot of them were. I instructed the officers, make sure when you cuff up the inmates, you escort them to me in the hobby shop, because I want to photograph these inmates. I want to photograph their injuries, see if they have any injuries prior to you moving them somewhere else.
Exactly.
Well, when I ended up going in the hobby room and my first set of pictures, there was a couple officers on the Greenwall. They escorted a couple inmates in there. They didn't know what was going on. And when they stepped in the room, they saw me with my camera equipment. And right away, two of the officers said, what the F are you doing, Officer VODICKA? And I said, I'm doing my job. You do your job, I'll do my job.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing? I says, I need to photograph these inmates from top to bottom to protect ourselves from the Department of Correction and yourself, Officer so-and-so. I don't want to mention his name, but it's in the book. The names are in the book. I mean, everything's in the book. So I instructed that, and then right away they got offensive and like cussing at me, you inmate lover, what the hell are you doing, Bob, off and on. So what happened was later that day when they had to escort them to their housing units to put them back in their cells, because we couldn't house them all in ad seg because our ad segs were full. Yeah. So they put them back in their housing units as temporary ad seg. Well, when they brought them back into their cells, they unhandcuffed them. They destroyed all their personal property in their cells, destroyed their televisions, tore up their photo albums, destroyed them. And as they were putting them in, they thumped them. They beat them down.
Yeah.
So what happened later on is all these guys, a lot of Southern Hispanics were beat down pretty good. So later on, they ended up, one of the Southern Hispanics sent a letter out to their family members, letting them know what's going on, what these guys did to us. Well, that letter went to Sacramento, to the investigative unit up there, who formed and said, look, we're going down to investigate this. And sure enough, they came down and started their investigation on the Greenwall.
Okay. And when they did come down, I imagine they were met with a cold response, to say the least. I imagine they were met with some kind of resistance of cooperation, being that the warden, internal affairs, and pretty much the top dogs concerning CDCR or CDC at the time were even they probably weren't given anything to this investigator. How did that work out?
There were several investigators that came down, because when they came down, they went into the investigations unit, and they had a little room in there. And I remember them calling me, and they called me on the phone, and they say, VODICKA, we need you to come up. We need to interview and talk to you about what you did and how your participation was. And they asked me, if you want a union rep, bring a union rep. If you want a representation. And I told them right away, I don't need a union rep. I didn't do anything wrong. I just did what I was told.
Yeah.
And I spent about 2 or 3 hours in there going over several photographs of the inmates that were abused. And they saw in the pictures, none of them were abused, none of them were touched, none of them like that. And I just interviewed with them for several hours. And then some of the documentation and all that was kept in the warden's office. Well, the warden wasn't going to give up that documentation without a fight, which he never did. He kept it locked up in boxes where they couldn't get to it.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so to go back, so Greenwall forms. There's this war that's going on. Are the numbers increasing of Greenwall members that are joining? Are Greenwall members being shipped out? Is it a small group? Is it something that's an idea to take over all of the prison industry as far as corrections go? Like, what was the plan of the Greenwall, if you knew it? Like, did they have a plan to try to recruit people fresh off the academy bus, or what were they doing?
Well, it started out at a low form, probably when the Thanksgiving riot happened. There's 600 officers were at that prison, roughly 600 to 7 officers. That's including officers, and then that's not including the sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. It started off about after the Thanksgiving riot. Let's say there was about a handful, about 50. Okay? It grew from 50 within 3 to 6 months to a year, from 50 to about 450. So 3/4 of the officers at Salinas Valley State Prison were part of the Greenwall, or were associated with the Greenwall member.
Okay. Wow.
So it had a number. So every yard had basically you guys would call them shot callers, or they're the ones that control the yard. Every yard had an officer that was sort of the clique of that yard for the Greenwall members.
Wow. Amazing.
And they reported to somebody in ISU, and then the ISU officers had that open door with the warden, and they would go up to the warden and tell him what's going on on his prison. So the warden wanted to make sure we have control of this prison. The convicts and the inmates aren't going to control my prison. So that's why he formed this group called the Greenwall.
Okay, and look, we're gonna take one step back, just so before we go forward, we have everything about you out there. As far as, like, I'm interested to know what your intentions were becoming a correctional officer, why you joined, what your history was like. I'm sure people can find this out if they pick up your book, but for the people who don't have that option or don't have the finances to be able to do that, go ahead and tell the people a little bit about your background and what made you want to join, and what kind of correctional officer you considered yourself to be.
Well, I always want to become some type of law enforcement officer in my career, going through high school, through junior college. I wanted to get in some type of law enforcement. I grew up in Camarillo, California, and then shortly after that, I went to Moore Park College down in Moore Park, California, and played college basketball there. And I got a 2-year degree in criminal justice. And shortly after that, I had some couple basketball scholarships at other colleges, but I chose to go to Texas for about 6 months. And I was around 19 or 20 at the time. And you had to be like at least 21 years old to go into some LAPD, LA Sheriff, or whatever. So shortly after that, I came home and didn't finish out my college, my junior year of college. I came home and my father said, "Hey, son, why don't you join the Army or join the military, Air Force or something?" I said, "Hey, that's a good idea, Dad." So I joined the United States Army in 1983. I ended up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I was detached to a special forces unit. I worked a lot around the Rangers and the Special Ops and Special Forces unit. I didn't train with them, but I got to go out with them when they worked out. I worked in their headquarters unit. So right before my enlistment was getting ready to leave the Army, my father had contacted me and said, "Hey, son, the California Department of Corrections in California are hiring. They need several officers to fill these prisons." So he sent me an application about 6 months prior to me getting out. And then I ended up signing, and I ended up filling out the application. And then shortly after that, I got home. Within about 2 or 3 months, I started testing with the Department of Corrections. So my first duty assignment was after I got out of the academy in Gulf, California, which when I was in the academy, Steve, they never talked about the code of silence. There was no such thing as the Green Wall in 1988. There was no such thing as the Green Wall. There was nothing that didn't even exist. So after I left the academy, I ended up going to Corcoran State Prison, which is down in Corcoran, and I activated that prison. I mean, there was no inmates or convicts there at the time, and we got the first buses that came in and started filling up that prison.
Okay.
And then I always wanted to become a law enforcement officer. I always wanted to wear that badge because, you know, the badge means it's powerful. But I didn't abuse my badge. I didn't abuse my authority. You know, in my 18 years with the Department of Corrections, as long as I was in, I was assaulted once, but I was spit on and gassed, you know, but I always had that respect with the convicts or the inmates. You know, I gave them respect, they gave me respect back. When I was a kitchen officer over at the shoe kitchen, me and my partner, Jesse, we had inmates that were on the yard coming up, hey, VODICKA, we want to work for you. We want to come work for you, man. You got a great kitchen, you got great staff, you don't have problems there, you take care of business. You know, you got a lot of respect by the convicts and inmates on this yard, man. We want to work for you. Yeah. And there was like a waiting list trying to get into, you know, to me and Gonzalez, because we ran a tight program.